So every time I meet new people, you know, for some reason it has not become culturally inappropriate to ask them who they are or what they do. And every time I respond to them, well, I'm a legal creative, someone whose main passion lies in exploring progressive ideas in history, politics, and economics as visitors to achieving systemic justice. And there's always a blank stare on their faces. And so, with a defeated voice, I say, I think the conventional word is lawyer. Now, a lot of times when I say this, the response back is people quote William Shakespeare to me. There's a character in one of William Shakespeare's play, Dick the Butcher, who said, kill all the lawyers as a way to improving the country. Now, a lot of you have your chance to kill me. But before you do, I want to tell you a story. But before I do, I think a lot of us have watched a number of TED Talks. And I believe I'm probably the millionth speaker who's talking at a TEDx event. And so being the millionth speaker, I wondered to myself, how am I going to do it differently? I'm probably in the same position as the sixth wife of Henry VI, who said, I know what is expected of me, but I'm not sure how I'm expected to do it differently. But I assure you, as Henry VI told his wife, I shall not keep you here for long. I want to tell you about politics. I want you to leave here viewing politics as a virtue. I want you to live politics. I want you to speak politics. And I want to renew your belief in the process of politics. But I suppose, like so many people who are invited to speak at a TEDx event, we have all imagined speaking at a TEDx event. At least once we have, you know, whether we are sitting in our rooms or standing in front of our bathroom mirrors. We've always wondered what is it that we would say when the opportunity does come. But so often, the time between when the chance does finally arrive and when we first imagined it would have changed us as persons. That we may not be living the same lives we lived when we first practiced our speeches in front of our bathroom mirrors. And if you are like me, that time would have so profoundly changed you. By the time you would have received your invitation, the speech you've once rehearsed would have looked nothing like the speech you're about to give. A couple of months ago, I would have probably described myself as an academic, a person who's interested in theoretical frameworks, a person who is very interested in 16th century philosophy, a person who is so interested in thinking about legal argumentation and the processes of making law work. Today, I stand before you as a social activist, a person who is accused of trying to overthrow the Constitution of Ghana, a person for whom a police complaint has been officially made for high treason, and the penalty for which is the death penalty. I come to this TEDx event as a community mobilizer, as a person who believes and has found a new meaning in mobilizing and bringing citizens together. And as a citizen, I have done nothing but what the purpose of our democracy means to us. And as a citizen, the idea of what citizenship means has given me a renewed faith in what our democratic process is. But for so many of us, it is perhaps easy to understand all that I'm saying with a handy hashtag, fix the country. We are, after all, millennials. And when so many of you here fix the country, my sense is that you believe that you want to hear the juicy tidbits. You want to hear how it started. You want to understand where we are evolving towards. And so did I want to share that conversation with you. However, one of the quick realities that sets in for me is that there's a limit to what I can talk about and to what you can hear me speak about. You see, as a TEDx speaker, there are 4 main guidelines you are supposed to observe. The first one is that guideline 1 says that you cannot speak about any commercial agenda. And you cannot speak about any political agenda. You can have no religious agenda, and you cannot speak bad science. And so I wondered to myself, perhaps what I should do is to critique the TEDx guidelines. Is to politicize, or this attempt to depoliticize what is essentially a political activity. It is an endeavor I am certain I will fail at. But especially because I want to be invited back here, I'll give it my best shot. Now, truth be told, I would have loved to talk to you about my experiences convening Fix the Country in Ghana, the etiquette of virtual mobilizing, of the deepening gulf between the online communities and the offline spaces that so many of people in this country live in. But I would have also loved to talk to you about the narrowing interest between Twitter dadabes, or persons perceived to be in the middle class, and working class Ghanaians. But this would have been politics. Fix the Country is a movement that, after all, generated or has generated more counter hashtags and more counter demonstrations than any real concrete actions to fix the country. And I would have loved to talk to you about the ethical dimensions of protesting within COVID-19. I would have loved to talk to you about the difficulties of holding governments to account while we are dealing with a global pandemic, of the ways in which our sociocultural realities of engaging governments, of exercising our rights as citizens, has changed. But in Ghana, even COVID-19 is politicized. So I cannot speak about that. So in every ways in which I think of conceptualizing and talking to you about what I am passionate about, Guideline 2 of the regulations haunts me. Maybe I should probe why Fix the Country as an institutional mechanism is pursuing a decentralized framework that has pursued what is essentially a leaderless movement so as to bring so many people and so many voices into the democratic process. Perhaps in that process, I would have talked to you about the so many ways in which Fix the Country is asking novel questions of our democracy. It's asking shifting ways of viewing problems and achieving social justice by using citizens as a framework to reforming our politics. I use the word politics. So that wouldn't pass with TEDx event. So perhaps today I want to understand why so many times when I meet so many young people and so many Ghanaians, they tell me, I don't do politics. And when they say this to me, a lot of times, they don't, or they do not mean it as they have no interest to be politicians. They do not mean it as they don't want to reconceptualize or think of politics as a profession. They mean they want to disengage from discussing socio-economic issues that affect them. And I've always wondered why. Why is there an appeal for apoliticization of our lives? And is that even possible? What does it mean to not talk politics? So I've started to wonder individually and privately whether there's any subject matter that is not politics. Because you see, in Ghana, in a country like Ghana, our cultural realities makes a virtue of depoliticizing politics. You see, very often we forget that our lives in society itself is politics. You know, I do not, as a citizen myself, I understand people's angst about thinking of their problems as being politics. And there's something you could say almost religious and yet naively refreshing about a people who want to live their lives in a republic and in a democracy and want that life to be depoliticized. People want a monotonous and dreary life. We want our rights respected without asking for it. We want corruption fixed without speaking up against it. But we cannot blame people, you know, for people who have seen the worst forms of politics, who have seen politics deployed to divide rather than to unite us, and who have seen politics used in a way in which it has nurtured the worst of ourselves rather than bring out the best of us, who have seen politics create problems rather than solutions. I understand people's need to find comfort zone where what they think politics is shut away from them. But yet, as a person who is even committed to building an a-partisan movement, and I say a-partisan and not apolitical, I need people to speak up. I want people to own their politics. I want them to believe in a different reality of what politics means. But perhaps the distinction we make between what politics is and what partisanship is often not very clear. Because a lot of times when we have said as Fix the Country that we are an a-partisan movement, but yet political, people do not understand it. People necessarily think that we want to mobilize as a political party, that we believe in the ethic of organizing as a youth wing of or a youth appendage of a political party. But the distinction between what is partisan and what is politics must not be taken for granted. Because if we take the distinction between what is partisan and what is politics for granted, partisan frameworks will be used and deployed to reframe our voices, to discredit what we are trying to achieve. But I also want to be able to activate people as creators, as agents, and as entrepreneurs of politics. And so I need to address the question, you would agree, why do we find politics so unattractive? So let me try to take something which we may think politics is not involved in. Poverty, maybe. Because so many of our citizens are poor, and so many of them want to live a depoliticized life. So maybe poverty. Now, poverty is essentially politics at its finest, because politics determines who is poor and who is not. Politics, not money, determines poverty. But money itself is politics, because you cannot print your own money because the central government will not allow you to do so. Bitcoin is politicized. Who gives you a haircut is political. Who can sell you used car spare parts is a political decision. In fact, it turns out in Ghana, Nigerians cannot sell you used car spare parts, and this is by law. So who eats and who doesn't eat? What you can eat and what you don't get to eat is determined by politics. In fact, who you love and who you don't love is a political question. Just a couple of weeks ago, a now infamous or famous Ghanaian politician is shopping an anti-gay legislation which bans blowjobs. Even blowjobs are politics. So political decisions that enact poverty and that affect our sociocultural realities and life in the way in which we live life are always around us. They exist at the national level, at the global level, at the regional level, even at the family level. Politics has always been constructed. What we wear, what we drink, politics. So where does this need and drive for a depoliticized politics derive from? But you see, in Ghana specifically, there's an appeal of depoliticization that even has found its way into law. And so many of us never reflect on it. Under the Constitution of Ghana, we say that chiefs cannot engage in active politics, not partisanship, but politics. Now, who becomes a chief? The modes of succession and inheritance of chieftaincy is politics. Chieftaincy itself is, we call them traditional political institutions. So how do you depoliticize a political institution? Now, it seems to me that the reason why we continue to run away from politics is that we are always in the search for the narrow and the safe. We seek the neutrality that exists and a comfort in our opinions that does not create controversy. We do not want to divide because we think passionate disagreements necessarily implies conflict, and conflict is ethically undesirable. So I would have loved to nail this my first TEDx talk by showing you cat videos. Maybe even sing a lullaby, because maybe lullaby is not politics. But I struggle with our fear of politics. And how do we improve that which we find frightful in order to reform the politics we refuse to talk about? And this is why I want to leave you with something that changes perhaps your mindset and that makes you want to do politics. Because by refusing to do politics, you are in fact making a political decision. You are refusing to engage with a status quo that perhaps benefits you, that you do not see the argument for it to change. And that is a political decision you have made. So by telling me that you do not do politics, you've chosen a different kind of politics. A politics that thrives in hypocrisy. A politics that refuses to engage with the truth. Is this the politics you want to be held responsible for? You have chosen to be unaccountable for your own actions and to hold those who are around you responsible for their actions. You are refusing to engage with the politics that you are creating yourself. And by so doing, refusing to engage with those who create different politics around you. Our dreams for democracy, for freedom, and for justice are valid. And if we continue to fear politics, we cannot achieve the dreams that our founding fathers and parents or mothers left behind for us. I know it won't always seem that easy. But the demand for social justice is always right. And it's always beautiful. And the fight for equality, the fight for freedom from hunger, and even the demand for a new constitution for a new generation is politics, and it's good politics. Who cares if you're doing good, even if it gets called politics?